Well, welcome to Cathedral Grove, just outside Parksville on Vancouver Island. Today, we're really excited to do a walkthrough with you of this area. For those of you who are joining a little bit late, I had a scheduled one that I had some technical difficulties with, so we are doing this live instead. Hope you find it, and you can watch the rewatch. So if you're here to see Cathedral Grove here in MacMillan Provincial Park on Vancouver Island, you are in the right place. Let me spin around the camera and show you the beautiful forest that I'm looking at right now. Once again, for those who are just finding this live, welcome. I had a different scheduled live that was to show up, but had some technical difficulties with it. So this is the one that we're doing. Hope you enjoy it when you find it, and checking it out on the rewatch. Beautiful boardwalk here in the middle of Cathedral Grove on Vancouver Island. And we're going to spend about the next 35 to 40 minutes doing a bit of a walkthrough of the area. It is an amazing place, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. For those in the chat, live chat, great, I'm glad you found me. Yeah, I had some technical difficulties, but we are back, and we are going to have a great time journeying through the forest today here on Vancouver Island, this old growth forest. You can see as I move up into the canopy, the beautiful trees. Most of what you're seeing right now are Douglas Fir trees, and we will shortly move into the really big ones. But just a beautiful morning here, cool, crisp morning in the summertime, August the 3rd. So 18 degrees Celsius. Just nice, cool, beautiful morning. And again, hello to everybody who's joining me in the chat. Great to have you. Just waiting a few minutes to get everybody in as we start. This park is one of the most accessible old growth areas on Vancouver Island. For those wondering about the YouTube link, I had some technical difficulties with that one, so we had to, you get one try basically on them, scheduled ones. And if you have a technical difficulty, it kicks you out and boom, you got to start again. So I'm glad everybody found me. If somebody wants to go to some of the Facebook pages and share the new link, that would be fantastic. If not, no worries. Well, Cathedral Grove, as I mentioned, is located in MacMillan Provincial Park. It's named after H.R. Harvey MacMillan. He was a famous Canadian forestry baron, which is kind of ironic to many people, as he is responsible for the removal of so many old growth trees here on Vancouver Island, and yet he is the one who donated this land to be a provincial park many years ago. The park is actually about 740 acres. For those who are on the metric system, that's around 301 hectares, or just over 1 square mile in size. And some of the trees that we're going to see today are actually more than 800 years old. Those trees are over 30 feet tall, 9 meters tall. I'm sorry, not tall. That wouldn't be very impressive, would it? 30 feet, 9 meters in circumference. That's their hug width. I'm also going to mention today too, part of the technical difficulties that I was dealing with was the fact that usually I have 5G signal coverage in this park, and for today, for some reason, perhaps one of the towers are out, I've just got 3 LTE bars, which is considerably less coverage. And so I'm hoping that the footage won't be too chunky, but that you'll get some beautiful looks at the trees today. We're actually starting our tour on the south side. There's 2 sides to the park. We've got the north side, which has a lot more of the western red cedars, and we'll get over there soon, as well as a beautiful cedar boardwalk and glimpses of the Cameron Lake on that side. So that is a whole experience in and of itself. But we're starting here on the south side, which is known for far more Douglas fir trees, much more lush undergrowth and moss as well. And we'll show you some close-ups on some of the moss as we walk along here through this beautiful forest trail. And many of the big old growth trees that are the Douglas Fir trees are on this side, the south side. The whole park has got a highway, Highway 4, that runs through the center of it. You can see some of the fallen trees from years past. We'll talk about why they fell in just a little bit. And yes, somebody in the chat mentioned Ewoks. This was where parts of the Star Wars Return of the Jedi film were filmed way back in the early 80s, as well more recently, movies like one of the recent Jurassic Park movies were filmed here as well. So there's quite a history of this park showing up in movies as well. But yeah, a lot of the lot more lush here, and on the south side, and we'll look at the big trees momentarily. A lot of these trees that you're looking at now that are fallen trees would have fallen back in 1997 when there was very high winds on New Year's Day back then that caused extensive damage to the grove and the surrounding forest, and literally hundreds of trees fell. And much of the trail system that we're walking on now was actually destroyed back there in 97, which is a lot of years ago now, but still you can see the impact of it. BC Parks, who run this provincial park in conjunction with the First Nations people who traditionally have been on this land, went into full force and worked at trail rehabilitation to prevent further damage, and that was fantastic. There's a lot of these signs that run through the park. This one is highlighting something called nursing logs, and right in front of us is exactly that, a nursing log. And what a nursing log is a log that's fallen. For example, this one that would have fallen back in 97 or thereabouts in that storm, and they've begun to rot, but that rot has turned into fodder or the ground, almost the soil for new growth. And you can see a whole new tree is coming out of this, what's called a nursing stump. And so that is what a nursing stump is. And we'll run into several nursing stumps. You can watch for those as we go along. Against old rotting trees that are brimming with new growth and new life. So peaceful. I'm going to show you too this moss. I mentioned that this is a lot. This side of the park is a lot thicker with moss. And the moss doesn't just grow on one side of the tree here. It literally drapes entire branches and drapes down entire trees in the moss that's here. Of course, this is partly due to the fact that we're in a biosphere here that is very near to a rainforest. It's actually a rain shed. It doesn't quite have enough rainfall to be considered a rainforest, but there are rainforest areas on Vancouver Island. Average rainfall on Vancouver Island as a whole is about 3 meters annually. That's about 11 feet of rain every year that falls here. Now, granted, it has been drier the last few years, and if you've been listening to the news at all, you'll have heard of all the forest fires that are starting here and have been much more prevalent in the last 4 or 5 years. We think of our friends in Alberta and other parts of British Columbia who are dealing with that. Now, I want to show you this, give you a sense of the size of some of these trees. Right beside us here, as we're walking along this path on the south side, is a fallen tree, perhaps from back in 97 in that windstorm. There were other windstorms further back as well. Back in 1990, a tropical storm resulted in extensive flooding and about 6 hectares of trees that were blown down. But this one here that we're looking at, this is, somebody asked me in the comments, Annette, did I buy out the entire grove this morning? Well, no, it's 9 a.m. here. And trust me, within the next 2 hours, or by the time we're finished this, there'll be a lot more people in it. So I thought if I strike early with you, we'll get a better, we'll get the place to ourselves a little bit more. But so this is a fallen tree, and you're actually looking at the root system. We'll see some really nice root systems on the north side. But this is a root system. It's probably about 15 feet tall at the base. And I just want to walk with you along the body of the tree to show you how big some of these trees are. So we're just going to start walking. We're actually walking towards the tallest tree in the park right now. But this tree just goes on and on and on. The section we're walking down now is probably one of the most popular sections. It's moving up to the largest tree in the park. That's interesting as you walk along, you hear different accents and different languages from all over the world. This is very much a destination, a melting pot destination. And you can get a sense here, this lady who's up on this tree. And by the way, this is the same fallen tree that we've been following for the last 3 or 4 minutes. They're up above in front of the largest tree in the grove. This is a Douglas fir tree, and it is over 800 years old. And just gives you a sense of the size of it, just in looking at our friend here who's up on the fallen tree just beside this Douglas fir, how huge that is. And I'm just going to go up, just give you a sense of the height as well. It's about 250 feet tall. That's about 76 meters in height. And it just goes up and up. I'm almost looking straight up right now. Move to the side a little bit to really get the height of that for you guys. It's about 30 feet round. Douglas fir trees are some of the oldest living tree species in Canada. They can live to be over 1,000 years old. Absolutely huge. Now, interesting, this isn't even actually the tallest tree on Vancouver Island. The tallest tree on Vancouver Island is almost 20 meters taller. It's a CHÇCK tree. It's a spruce tree located on the other side of the island. What is the diameter about? The diameter on this is about 30 feet. Let's see that guy walking up now to it. Just to give you another sense of, just another perspective, I love this little sign here. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that iconic European monument. It's about 56 meters tall. And beside it there is the big tree we've just looked at 76 meters, so significantly larger. This tree was over 300 years old when Christopher Columbus first arrived in North America in 1492. Again, just the size of that tree and scale with this guy who was just giving it a little hug there. There's also another big tree on Vancouver Island, and it's called the Big Lonely Doug. And its name, as its name suggests, it's a Douglas fir. It's located in the Gordon River Valley on the southwest side of Vancouver Island. And it stands alone, all by itself in a big clear-cut area. And conservationists estimate that the Big Lonely Doug is between 750 and 1,200 years old. And its height is a little bit shorter than the big tree we just saw. It only stands at about 70 meters or 230, a mere 230 feet, and is about 39 feet round. But it's overall the biggest tree. This is always interesting. We've got a big Douglas fir that is right in front of us, but then to the right of it, we've got what was a stump or a broken tree, a broken off Douglas fir tree, that when it was much younger, its root system entangled with this Douglas fir beside it, and it continues to live. Actually, it doesn't grow, but it continues to live, and it lives off the root system of the Douglas fir tree beside it. This is called a living stump. Still very much alive, but the bark kind of curls over the top. I like that one. Big old stump there. Again, just the sun is coming out. This sunrise was around 6:30 this morning. So we've had some good sunlight coming into the forest floor, but now you can really see it shining there on some of the ferns, the sword ferns on the ground. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can definitely see in the distance that highway number 4 that runs from the east coast of the island across to the west coast of the island. Port Alberni is the next city over. It's about 20 kilometers away, and then another 120 or so beyond that, you get to the west coast Tofino, Ucluelet communities that are so popular for surfing and for storm watching in the winters. And we're going to take a right and just head just a little ways down here, still on the south side of the highway. I want to show you a couple of kind of cool spots. One is a tree that I call Scar. Another is a tree that we're going to take a little jump into and enjoy. And the third is this one on our left. And again, another fallen tree. You remember the length of the other one we saw? People were standing on it. Went all the way along. And this one continues for quite a distance as well. Somebody's asked in the chat whether this video will be available for rewatch after. Absolutely it will. The other one, unfortunately, that I hoped to schedule, or I had scheduled for today, had some technical glitches, so we had to do a quick shift and run this one instead. But this one will be available for rewatch, absolutely. And by the way, as we're walking along, following this long tree to our next stop, I want to let you know that in the description below, there's a little link to buy me a coffee. And if you like this and have the means or the interest and do want to leave a little tip to support the touring work and the other content work that I do, feel free to do that. The bonus of giving a tip on Buy Me a Coffee is to get onto my newsletter. And that email newsletter lets you know when new series of tours are coming up, when new content is released. And it's a better way to follow what I'm doing than just to hope for the best and watch the Facebook groups or other spots. So this is a Western red cedar. So this is a different type of tree than we've seen originally. We've been looking at Douglas firs so far, and we'll see a lot more of these Western red cedars on the north side. But this is always a neat stop because it is a tree that was hit years ago, perhaps decades ago, with a lightning strike. And we'll see a lot of these as we go. Lightning comes, hits the top of the tree, and it has to come down and connect somewhere to the ground because that's the way that lightning works. And so it comes all the way to the ground, and inside of it, we'll actually walk you inside of it here. You can actually see the burnt out char of the tree in the distance. See the black tree? See the black in there? That's burnt out char still from when it was on fire in the center of it from that lightning strike so many years ago. And that's a big tree. You can actually go right into that and view it. Somebody was saying in the comments that they didn't want to see any spiders on this trip. If there's going to be any spiders, they'll definitely be in there. Let me just run in and show you just the size of this base of this tree for just a second. There I am. Right inside here, you can go all the way inside, and it goes way up, probably about 30 feet. And it's that black char again. I can rub my hands on it, and I get a little bit of black char on my hands. I can show you when I come out. So that's just the size of these trees. And we saw the one, of course, over at the Douglas fir tree, but with this Western red cedar, it's the same thing. And you can see I've got that black char from that lightning strike so many decades ago in that tree, still on the inside. There you go. Now you guys can go and take your turn. There you go. There you go. Just lightning strikes and Western red cedars, and it's kind of the fun of this place. Yeah, it is amazing. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to get back to all my friends online here. There we go. Oh, wonderful. It was great to talk to people there. But if you're just joining me, we are in Cathedral Grove on Vancouver Island, central Vancouver Island, an old growth forest, the most accessible of the old growth forests here on the island. We're just journeying around. Unfortunately, today we had a bit of technical difficulties with my scheduled live stream, so we shifted over to this new stream. So hopefully, if you're finding me here, you didn't miss too much. We've also got very low cell phone coverage today, which means that there could be a lot of areas where it's a little bit not crisp and clean as it usually is. So my apologies for that ahead of time. Those are things that are must be a cell tower down or something in the area. Usually I have probably 3 5G bars, and today I have 2 LT bars. And I'm glad to hear somebody in the comments saying it's working fine. So that makes me happy because you're getting a better quality experience, which I love to bring to you. This is a tree that I've nicknamed Scar. It's a big old Douglas fir tree, and there's 2 things about it that I like showing you. And one is that I want to show you today, and one is this one has a bark system that kind of is at the base twisted. I don't know if you can see that at the base. Further up, you can see just the bark is up and down, but at the base here, it kind of twists around, and there's a big scar all the way along the side, which has given it its nickname from me. And you can see that there's actually 2 other trees that are connected to the root system at the bottom that are western red cedars, and then a spruce on the left that come out of it. And so that's kind of a neat, that's just something amazing as I look at these trees. Also, you've got this big old bark burr right here. So this tree is full of surprises for us, and just the real beefy, I'm going to call that beefy bark at the bottom. This is a beautiful, unique Douglas fir tree. Again, not the largest in the park, but I think one of the most interesting. And just to move up into the canopy and show you the height of this. Look at that. Fantastic. Somebody in the chat's asking, does anybody else see faces in the tree? Now these trees, if you get too close to them, sometimes they'll actually suck you in and trap you in the bark. And so that's why there's faces. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that bubbly bark there, something else. Beautiful. Now, unfortunately, coverage isn't good today, so I'm not going to venture down further this way. But if I could venture down there where those people are coming from, there is the East and the West Cameron rivers, which are probably running pretty light right now because it is summer. And so the runoff from the 2 mountains that we're kind of nested between, one is Arrowsmith to our south, and to the north on the other side of Cameron Lake, which I mentioned, is Wesley Ridge. Those 2 mountains are obviously, specifically Arrowsmith, not covered right now in any snow because it's the middle of summer and it's been 20, 30 degrees out. That snow cap there has all but melted. And so the rivers are running very low, if not for these ones, almost bare. We might take a peek at that when we get to the north side and see what it's like. Another 2 giant Douglas fir trees on our right as we walk along. And we're walking along now towards the highway, and then we'll do our skip over to the north side of the park. And I love about the north side is there's a lot more western red cedars. There's another beautiful and even better example of a burnt out center of a western red cedar. There's a beautiful walking boardwalk over there that was just put in actually over the last 4 years. It was built in over COVID. They expanded it and built it new, and it was absolutely beautiful. So that's that's something that we're looking forward to. So little kids climb on the trees here. Great, great experience to run along those. Another of these people speaking French as I walk by. Lots of people from Europe wandering the park with us this morning, getting their first glimpses of the beautiful trees this morning. Well, as we walk back, it's probably about 50 to 60 feet down here we're going to walk. I once again want to let you know that if you like what you're seeing this morning and do want to support the tours, there's a couple ways you can do that. One is just by simply subscribing to the channel here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the other way is, if you're interested, you can click on the description below and go over to my Buy Me a Coffee. This will be my little midstream ad here. One of the cool things about Buy Me a Coffee, if you want to leave a little tip there, is that not only does it help me support some of the work that I do here in creating these tours and other content, but it also gives you the opportunity to be on my email list. And what happens with that is you basically get an email every time I start a new series of tours or release a new series of videos, which I've been working on a few, and those will be coming hopefully in the next couple of months to my YouTube channel and other little things like that. So just kind of a shout out. If you're able to and interested, you can go ahead and do that, and away we go. Well, here we come up now to the end of our south side journey, and we'll be crossing the road. Now, this is always a little bit contentious because you've got a provincial park with a major highway running down the middle of it. And walking across the highway from south to north or north to south is always a little bit of a feat of taking your life in your hands. Some people, including semi-trucks, move through this at a very quick rate. This is the entrance sign that you'd see when you came to Cathedral Grove. And again, most of this we've talked about the fires in the past, about the 800-year-old, 900-year-old trees, and about David Douglas, dedicated to him. David Douglas, of course, a Scottish botanist who identified over 200 new species of trees in North America in the 1800s, early 1800s, including the Douglas Fir tree, which this is named after. All right, well, let's head across the highway and see what we can do. They've put in these orange cones to keep people from doing U-turns, which is actually a very smart move. Oh, I think we're free. We can just walk right across, no problem. We can even do a little dance in the middle of the road and not have to worry about anybody hitting us. All right, so we're going to move into the north side now. A beautiful, beautiful boardwalk that we're going to walk on. We're going to move through the first section pretty quick, and then we're going to spin and we're going to find some of these western red cedars and show you a few other things, including Cameron Lake, a burnt out center of a tree, a few things like that. So I'm excited about this. I'll tell you a little more history about the park during this segment of our tour as well. So stick around. There's lots more to come. This boardwalk probably was built about 3 years ago, and I loved it because at the time it smelled so good, you guys. If you were walking along here with me, not only would the wood be very, very bright red. Of course, it's cedar, so it's faded now a little bit, but it was also smelled so good. And it's the odd fall or early spring morning when it's very wet and its sun is on it and the mist is coming off it, and it does still smell like that. But oh boy, is that ever a treat when you get to walk through it. So this is the first of our big western red cedars we're going to see. And I want to stop for a moment because there is a difference between western red cedars and Douglas firs, and that is really shown in specifically with our eyes in the bark. The bark on western red cedars has got a little bit of a red tinge to it. You can't really see it right now, I don't think, through the screen, but it's got a little bit of a red tinge to it. And it's also got almost like a combed bark. It's much more, I'm going to say combed, whereas the Douglas fir is much more gritty tree. This is also a CHÄCK here. It's a good example of a CHÄCK. I mentioned that the CHÄCK tree, spruce tree, is going to have is the tallest tree on the island. I mentioned that a little bit ago, but this one has it's kind of hard to see here, but its bark is almost like dragon scales, and that's how you can tell that one from the others. Getting away from the highway now again, starting to hear that, or starting to be peaceful, not hearing much, which I like. Beautiful to meander through this area. Western red cedars, a lot of big leaf maple trees in here, western hemlocks, and of course, just scattered throughout are the Douglas fir trees. Indigenous people are believed to have used this area for ceremonial purposes way prior to European settlers in the mid-19th century who came. Evidence of what they call culturally modified trees exist here in the western red cedars, which have, some of them have their bark, you can tell they've had their bark stripped years ago. Some of those have been found and dated back as far as the 12th century, and those bark strippings would be used for medicines, for shelters, clothing, bedding, food gathering utensils, baskets, and such. All right, so here's the beginning of this boardwalk. Actually, this is a good spot to show you the difference again between the western red cedar and the Douglas fir. So the western red cedar, you can see it's got almost like this little bit of a red tinge to it and almost like a combed bark. It's very thin streaks on the bark, right? Whereas on the other side, we've got our Douglas fir tree, which has got much more of a, I'm going to call it a gnarly, kind of a gnarly, big, chunky bark to it. So that's the main difference. Again, here's right side by side. Perfect example. The gnarly and the combed. So just so you can watch for those two as we go along, you'll see the difference between those two. To our left, just through the trees here, is Wesley Ridge. And we'll see in a moment, it'll glimmer through, is Cameron Lake, which is the lake that's fed by Mount Arrowsmith and the Cameron East and West rivers. Beautiful deep lake. Some say connects under Wesley Ridge and some of the mountains, connects underground to another lake called Horn Lake on the other side. Now that's just speculation that I've heard. I don't know that it's ever been proven, but they say that the two are connected. And just as I'm just taking a nice deep breath here, you can just smell the clean forest. And if you've never walked through a forest like this, it's hard to tell exactly what I'm trying to explain, but it definitely, there's a smell to it. Yeah, somebody says they can see that red hue, and that's what we're looking for. So there's Wesley Ridge. It's a bit blown out there from the sunlight, but there's Wesley Ridge. My wife Charlene has actually hiked to the top of that a few times. So that is on the north side of Cameron Lake. And of course, to our south then would be Mount Arrowsmith, which feeds those two rivers. Again, the flora, the undergrowth here isn't as thick as the other side, but there's a lot of the sword ferns as well. A lot of old rotting forest fall, a few other plants mixed in for good measure as well. This area was logged back until about the mid 1940s, and there's actually a really example of that on our right coming up, with a stump of a tree here that's been cut off years ago, and it's got a couple of notches in it which are interesting, and I'll just show you these little notches that are in here. We'll have other examples of them as we go along, but you see those little notches in the trees, a little notch right there, a little notch right there. Those would have been back in the day, people who were cutting the trees down, the foresters would have, the lumberjacks would have cut those little divots into the trees and put a board sticking out, almost like a tongue, or if you had like a, maybe like a, not a toothpick, but what are those sticks you stick on your tongue to protect your tonsils? One of those anyway, kind of sticking out of the tree. And they would stand on those, and that would allow them to kind of climb up the tree and then take their saw at the top and saw those trees down. And so that's what those are, little steps. This whole area really was known as a bit of a tourist trap, tourist stop all the way through the 1920s and 1930s. Just on the far side of Cameron Lake, there was actually a chateau that was built as part of the Canadian National Rail Line. They had a series of just really beautiful hotels all across Canada, places like the Besborough in Saskatoon, and Banff Springs Hotel, in Victoria, the Empress Hotel. This one here was a part of that line of hotels that were built, and this was actually not a full hotel, but it was a chalet on the lake. And then they had this CP trail that went up into the mountains and the hills, and they made this whole area kind of a tourist stop along the train out to Port Alberni. And so in the 1920s and 30s, it was quite the stop for that, long before it gained its protection status for over a quarter century. During that time, through the 20s, the 30s, there was some significant public pressure to petition the government to acquire these lands. I'll stop there for a second and continue that in a moment, but right in front of us here, I can see a good example of one of those fallen trees that I mentioned earlier, right off the start, with the root system. This particular one looks like it was probably hit by a lightning strike, because if we go into the middle, you can see it's well hollowed out in the center, and it does have some char on the sides, just right in here, and there's some black you can see from char just along the bottom edge right here. So that tells me that was hit by a lightning at some point, burned out the center, and weakened the root system enough that at some point it did fall. And so we are standing on a boardwalk probably about 5 feet above ground, and it's another probably 10 feet up. So it's probably a good 15 to 18 feet in height. So that's kind of an interesting look. These type of trees don't have tap roots that go down deep. They rather spread out to take advantage of the groundwater, and that makes them a little bit weaker when the winds come up. Now, again, Wesley Ridge in the distance, and you can see at the base of it, just barely at the base of it there, Cameron Lake. Let me just try to zoom in a little bit to that lake area. Just right in the center of your screen. Again, it's hard to see a little bit of the lake there. And then swampy ground in the forefront of where we are. And here's to our left another red cedar, and you can see much more of the red glimmer on that western red cedar on this particular one with this angle. Right? Starting to get more and more people in the park now. There's still one more big tree that I do want to stop and show you this morning as we go between these two big western red cedars. Look at that little kid and the size of the trees. That's an interesting shot, isn't it? Whatever happened to that lodge? After at some point, and you've caught me there without the details specifically, but at some point that lodge closed down, and I believe it had to do something with just really a lack of visitors. But I would have to do some more poking into that to get you the answer. You caught me off guard with that one. We talked about the pressure on the government to set these lands aside. Well, in 1844, that MacMillan, Harvey MacMillan, who we talked about, was the namesake of this park, in MacMillan Provincial Park, finally decided to donate the initial 136 acres, or hectares rather, to the province, and being designated as a provincial park back then in 1947. And that's kind of the story of how this park started. Now, we saw one of the biggest the biggest Douglas fir tree in the park earlier. This is one of the biggest western red cedars in the park standing in front of us now, and it doesn't look as big, but let me just set you down for a moment here and walk over and show you the size of it, but then also want to show you the inside of it as well, because that's something to see. Let me just make the adjustment here and just give you a sense of the size of this one. Now I'm going to be beside it, so it doesn't give you exact measurements, but it gives you a sense of the breadth of this particular one. There I am. That's my hand span as somebody who's 6 feet tall. It has a arm span out. That gives you a sense of the size of this one, right? Now there's one more thing I want to show you on the back side of this tree. Let me just grab the camera, swing around the back side, and I'll show you that as well. This is another one of the trees that was hit by a lightning strike back in history at some point, but it really has got a unique look. And again, we're a good 5 feet up on this boardwalk, so we're going to look down on this, but you can see the hollowed out area, really hollowed area of this particular tree that was hit by the lightning strike. Look at that. And I count at least 1, 2, 3, and inside 4, at least 4 different trees likely came together originally to make this. That's one of the things about the western red cedars. They'll come together in their early days, and they'll combine to make a big tree. And that's what we're seeing in front of us now. Okay, let's just finish up our tour with a couple more spots at the end of the trail system here. It's been wonderful to walk through. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll grab the link to this and you'll pass it off to some friends and maybe post some photos and Facebook and some different groups just to let people know that it was here, especially after the link didn't work. It'd be nice to spread the word. Some of those official groups of people who enjoy taking these in. We've been reading little signs all the way along, and this is one of the ones that I like the best. This is a sign for something actually we can't see right now because it's, we'll see if we can find one, but this is a sign for what is called butt rot. You say, what is that? Who came up with a word like that? You can see all the junior high kids would be laughing and giggling at that. Butt rot is a fungus that comes really at trees that have been downed or fallen over on their kind of the base, and it's a white fungus that grows there. And we'll see if we can find some examples. Often, like right here, looks like there was some, but people have touched it and picked it off. So we'll see if we can find a better example of some butt rot on the last few meters of our journey together. Another great example coming up on our left of one of those big, massive root systems on these trees. This one is larger than the one we previously saw. Again, just looking for that butt rot here, and you can see where it would have been formed here, it would have been formed here, but people have scratched it off or broken it off. It's almost like a half of a what would be called like a half of a mushroom stuck on the end of a tree is really what it is. Spin around to our left to see that root system. Look at that big old root system of that. What is it? That's a Douglas fir. Huge root system. The sun just peeking through above on this beautiful morning here on Vancouver Island's central Vancouver Island. Another example, we got a twofer on this one. We've got another example of those notches in the wood that would have been used. Tongue depressors. Tongue depressors were the words I was thinking. You ever go to the doctor and have your tongue depressor to check your tonsils? Think of a tongue depressor coming out of there, only larger, and that's where that was. And this is also a nursing stump. You can see this old rotting stump has got a tree coming right out of it. And then in the distance, I see some butt rot. Let's go in close. Do you see it there? Just a little, kind of almost like half mushrooms. Whoops, where's my finger? Half mushrooms there on the tree. That is butt rot. So that's interesting. Now you've seen it. What all the fuss and the talk is about. Somebody's asked me if something is edible, and I think they're maybe referring to the butt rot. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. All right. Just give me a couple moments and we'll. So we're almost back to the beginning now. So we're going to sign off here. I hope you have enjoyed our walkabout in Cathedral Grove here on Vancouver Island. Again, I'm just about halfway between the East Coast, which is Parksville, where I live, and over on the West Coast, we've got Port Alberni in between. This is part of my summer series of tours, and so I have got already a couple that are on my channel from that. And if you just go to my YouTube channel and click live, you'll see all of those. There's also a list just a little bit down on my channel listing all the live stream tours I've done. I'll be adding the next 2 links to next week's, which will be a beautiful morning paddleboard with you out on Vancouver Island's east coast here in the Pacific Ocean. We'll do a sunrise paddle tour. I'm going to get out of bed bright and early for you and head there, and that'll be a lot of fun. So thanks so much for coming along with me. It's been great to explore with you this morning, as always. Sorry about the technical difficulties at the end. Thanks for sticking around. If you have stuck around, please give a thumbs up on this video. Maybe make a comment down below in the below the description on this rather than in the chat. And again, if you like what you saw and you're available to do it, you want to get on my email list, buymeacoffee.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks, guys, and we will see you next time. Appreciate you all, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye now.